Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're gonna get started. Mr. Kramer. We've got state retirement and supplemental. We'll start with state retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jason Kramer, and I'll be presenting the analysis for the State Retirement Agency. The SRA, at the direction of the Board of Trustees, has primary responsibility over the state's retirement systems. As you can see here on the first page of the analysis, the fiscal 2025 allowance is $58.8 million, an increase of about $4.5 million from fiscal 24. The agency is funded through an administrative charge on all employers for whom the agency administers retirement benefits. State agencies account for roughly a third of the retirement agency's funding, while local school boards and governmental units make up the rest of the budget funding. You'll notice here on this first page that the fund split is different in this year's allowance, which I'll discuss shortly. The investment division is non-budgeted and makes up about 40% of the allowance. Turning to Exhibit 1 on page 4, this exhibit shows the membership in the state's retirement system by active employees and retirees. For the first time since fiscal 2010, the number of active members grew by more than the number of retirees. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 6, this exhibit shows the retirement agency's call center wait times. The agency has struggled in recent years to meet wait time and drop call goals. Recent wait times have averaged just under about 5 minutes. That's more than the 3-minute goal. SRA attributes the issue primarily to high turnover and staffing shortages. The allowance does add a member services administrator who will focus on customer service efforts, including call center performance. Turning to Exhibit 5 on page 8, Exhibit 5 compares the fiscal 2025 allowance to fiscal 2024. Within the administration division, cost increases are due primarily to statewide cost of living salary increases. Other large changes are due to ongoing costs associated with the completion of the MPAS 3 major IT project. As mentioned earlier and shown here at the top of Exhibit 5, the budget includes no reimbursable funds. Instead, the administration budget is entirely special funds. SRA states that this is due to changes made in Chapter 194 of 2023 last session, which alter the timing of calculating administrative fees paid by employers. However, DLS does not believe that this should impact the fund split of the budget. As in prior years, administrative fees are budgeted in every other state agency for their share of costs, and those costs are remitted to the retirement administration. DLS recommends reducing the SRA special fund allowance by the amount of the fees that are budgeted in other state agency budgets and adding language allowing those funds to be used by the retirement administration. This has no material impact on SRA's budget. Rather, it's about accurately budgeting expenses, as currently those fees are being double counted in the budget. Page 10, personnel. SRA had 7 positions in the allowance, including the member services coordinator I mentioned earlier. 3 of the new positions will be in the finance division to address delays in reporting, and 3 would expand access to training that's provided to retirees, employers, and SRA staff. Turning to Exhibit 6 on page 11, first issue I'll discuss is about the system's performance. Exhibit 6 shows the state's investment performance in fiscal 2023 by asset allocation. Total fund performance was a positive 3.67%, and system assets totaled $65.2 billion at the close of the fiscal year. Exhibit 8 on page 14 compares the system's performance to benchmarks. While the system did not meet its assumed rate of return, it did meet its return benchmark by nearly, or it did beat its return benchmark by nearly 1 percentage point. Exhibit 10 on page 16 shows the system's funding levels since 2006. The system closed fiscal 2023 with a 74.7% funded ratio. That's the first decline in the funded ratio since pension reforms over a decade ago. SRA projects being 80% actuarially funded by fiscal 2030, about 3 years later than it projected last year. Second issue I'll discuss begins at the bottom of page 16 and continues on to page 17. Regarding some outdated statutory requirements that have required a reduction in pension funding in recent years. The provision in state statute requires a reduction in the employer contribution by the amount of fees paid by local boards of education and community colleges. This provision is a remnant of prior structure of including fees in the contribution rates for employers, and was done in order to avoid double charging the local boards of education and community colleges. In fiscal 2024, this reduction was $21 million, or is expected to be $21 million. Since the state has been making a supplemental retirement contribution, typically $75 million in recent years, the funding provided to the pension system has been actuarially adequate. However, were the state to stop that supplemental contribution, funding would fall that much short of the actuarial requirements. DLS recommends adopting legislation that would remove this requirement. And then on page 18 is just our recommendation that I mentioned earlier to reduce special funds that are budgeted elsewhere in state agency budgets. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions for our analyst? Thank you very much. Mr. Treasurer. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to step out for a minute.
Sure.
You know it's nothing personal.
None taken. Go ahead and get started.
Go ahead and get started.
First of all, thank you all very much for having me. I'm sure right about now you're tired of seeing me and I understand. So we'll make this as
We're not
quick as-
saying that.
Thank you. Next to me is Mr. Martin Oven. He is the Executive Director of the Maryland State Retirement Agency. We've also brought senior staff with us to assist with any questions that you may have. Special thanks to Mr. Kramer, the DLS budget analyst, for his excellent examination of our system and the time he's taken over the past 5 years to understand the agency and its system. Last year, the Board of Trustees experienced a lot of change. We welcome our new vice chairman. Maybe you've heard of her, the Comptroller Brooke Learman, as well as a new budget secretary and 3 new trustees. These individuals have hit the ground running, bringing a new perspective and ideas to both the benefits and investments side of the system. Before I turn it over to Mr. Noven, I wanted to share an observation, as I've now been on the board for over 2 years and have seen firsthand that the staff here today and the employees in their division are 100% committed to serving our members, retirees, and beneficiaries. The pension system now has over 420,000 members, retirees, beneficiaries, and many have spouses, children, and dependent parents. What this means is that there are likely over 1 million people who rely on the state pension for support. You should know that this is a responsibility that neither staff nor the board takes lightly. Along those lines, I'd like to thank the committee and the pension subcommittee in particular for your continual support of the system and agency each year. And with that, I will now turn it over to Martin to give you a brief update on the status of the system and where the agency is at today.
I don't want to break anything. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, and thank you for the opportunity to say just a few words about the State Retirement Agency. I do want to also commend Jason Kramer for doing great work again this year. Very thorough, very helpful. And we do concur with both of his recommendations. We think they make a lot of sense. And we do apologize for the miscommunication that related to that budgeting error that he referenced in his materials. He did mention in his remarks that we were getting to 80% funded would take a couple more years. That doesn't give us a whole lot of heartbreak. We're still on pace to be fully funded by 2039. And that's the way these things go. There's going to be some up and down as we get there. But whatever happens, we're going to be fully funded by 2039 if we stick to our payment plan. And the General Assembly here has been fantastic at doing that. I come from a state prior to being here that was not so fantastic in doing that. And then we ended up in the death spiral of underfunding. So
Sure.
It's very important what you do. And I know it's hard to find extra money sometimes when the pension system needs it because there's lots of competing priorities. And this is one of those years. So I certainly appreciate that This is a more challenging year with interest rates going up. We have some additional expenses and additional contributions that have been certified. And most of that is because there's been an increase in salaries and there's been an increase in cost of living increases. So there's roughly $350 million in additional contributions from employers, and the state's an employer, to the pension system this year. 3/4 of that is salary increases in COLAs, and 1/4 of that is that we, while we had positive returns this year, we did not hit our 6.8% assumed rate of return. So those combined ended up requiring some additional contributions. Now, as a percentage of payroll, the contributions by employers is still less than what was projected when the reforms were done in 2018. But it's more than it was last year. And, you know, this is every year is a hard year to absorb additional costs, and we certainly appreciate this is a hard year to absorb those costs. The only other thing I wanted to say is, well, the investment team, I know Jason Kramer mentioned it, the 3.14% is less than the 6.8%, but it was positive and it was ahead of the 2.20% benchmark. So we're going in the right direction. As I'm sure you've read in the papers, markets are looking pretty good right now. So if things hold, we'll have a better story to tell next year. And then in addition to, you know, prudently handling our funding policies and handling that well and managing our investments prudently, we're very focused on member services. And I know that the call center was mentioned. I've been in last year, people were talking a lot about the abandonment rate, and we need to revisit some of our metrics. So part of the reason why we haven't been proactively reaching out to our members is because our call center folks were concerned that when I took this job, they were telling me, we can't, if we send out mailings and if we send out emails to them, they're going to call. And if they call, there's going to be a higher hold time. We'll have higher abandonment rates, and we'll get down to Annapolis and they're going to beat us up for these hold times and abandonment rates. I'm like, well, we can't, that's the tail wagging the dog, right? We've got to make sure that we're educating our members, that we're doing a good job letting them know what they need to know, and that we then have the resources to service them when they call. And it shouldn't only be calling. I know you've heard a lot about My SRPS in recent years. It's a fantastic product or platform where people can go in and get far better service than you'd ever get from a call center, very quickly, very accurately. And it doesn't take any staff time whatsoever since we have that system working. The problem is we have a lot of our members who that's not going to be the tool for them. So we have a call center, and that's great that we have that call center. But what we really need to do a better job at is figuring out how we have people who need to talk to someone or need a counseling appointment to get that without having to go through a whole lot of hold times and problem scheduling. And then we need to provide the self-service tools we need to make sure the people who don't need that hand holding, that they can get served quickly so they're not clogging up the works for the people who really need a call center. So those are the kinds of things we need to work on. Some people like those chat bots and those types of tools. Some really do like those a lot. That's not my favorite thing, but if we can serve everyone where they want to be served and in the way they want to be served, then we'll free up the call center so that we're not talking about, abandonment rates and call times as much, because we'll have a full array of tools. Now, we don't really know what that looks like other than as customers. So whenever you call anyone these days, whether it's your bank or the airlines or something else, they're always trying to send you over to an automated message to get your answer. So you're not talking to someone, or send you back to the website, or have you go sign up for something, or give you a little chat bot on the side. We really are way overdue at hiring someone who can help us with that. We've been, the rest of the world has gone that direction. People don't have the resources these days to hire incredibly large call centers. They're expensive. And even if we were able to keep all of our, bodies in chairs and didn't have the, all the turnover that we're trying to, overcome. We're holding on to an old model in a large way. So as a retirement system, we need to have a call center that functions for people who need to use it, but we really need to build out the rest of these options too. And so that's what we need, a retirement service administrator who would report to me directly to help us structure that, to help us operate like the rest of the world. And we're hoping to steal someone from another company who's done this very well somewhere else and found the right way to balance making sure everyone gets served, but using all the tools available. So I just wanted to point that out. That's what that position's about. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. Hopefully next year when we talk to you, we'll be able to talk to you about different metrics that are really, narrowing in on all these different things that tools that we've built and are using to serve our members more holistically. And hopefully we'll go back to being more proactive with our communications. So we're not scared of our members responding. So thank you.
I think probably everybody in this room has gotten plenty of emails from retirees about their Medicare Part D. I understand it finally of why we can't go back to where we were, but it's still very hard for the public to understand, for our retirees to understand. But I think that's one of the things that I've gotten the most emails about recently is people that are worried about what it's going to look like. And I'm talking to quite a few people that are telling me they think actually they're going to be okay and maybe even better on the new system. But it's one that's really hard for our retirees to go along with.
Yeah, it's a challenging situation. I think a lot of our retirees don't understand that we don't administer the healthcare program. So that causes more confusion than they,
Yes.
yes, so it's
It's been an interesting month or two. Yes. Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one witness here. Right there. That would be Hedda Rickus. Not here? Okay, all right. So we're going to go then to the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plan. Jason Kramer is the analyst and Rhonda Bell is the agency representative.
Thank you very much. I'll be presenting now the analysis for the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. MSRP provides employees with 4 supplemental retirement plan options and funds its operations with a fee on member accounts. As you can see on the cover page here, MSRP's fiscal 25 allowance of $2.5 million in special funds is a slight increase from the prior year. Exhibit 1 on page 2 shows the agency spending in the fiscal 2025 allowance. As you can see, 3/4 of spending is for personnel, with other costs mostly for contractual services and rent. Page 4 is the one issue I will discuss. Begins on page 4 and continues on to the next page. Last session, if you recall, chapter 100 of 2023 mandated that the state provide a match of up to $600 for state employees participating in a supplemental retirement plan, and added just under $12 million in general funds to the budget for that purpose. On page 5, exhibit 3, because you can see the match has driven growth in the program as shown here. There's 9% growth in the number of contributing members in fiscal 2023, and similar growth is projected in fiscal 2024 and 2025. On page 6, exhibit 4 shows the plan's expenses and revenues. Participant fees are 50 cents per month and 0.11% of assets. MSRP estimates a closing balance of 27% of expenses in fiscal 2024, which is very near its target goal. On page 8, DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any. Okay, so we have. Is that right? Who do we have? Rhonda Bell. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. For the record, I am Rhonda Bell, Executive Director of the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. With me today is our Acting Deputy Executive Director and CFO, Nakia Smith. And we are very grateful to Mr. Jason Kramer for all his hard work this year again. We are grateful and appreciative that he does concur with the governor's allowance. MSRP is doing great work for Maryland retirees and employees, and we're here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you for the opportunity.
I don't see any questions.
Thank you.
Great. That means you did a great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.